Dungeon Jam 2026 is live this week with people creating videos that in some way address a 5-room dungeon. If you've seen my videos before, you know I love the concept as a way to teach people how to play a game. And I thought, what would be cooler than looking at a brand new playtest that literally dropped today, The Crows RPG. Look down below to find a link to the Dungeon Jam playlist with all the cool videos on a lot of different topics, but also you'll find James Introcaso, lead designer for the game of Crows and for MCDM. James Introcaso has a video where he talks about Crows and the playtest that just came out, and he'll walk you through a lot of the neat ideas and why this game is as special as it is. But also, you can check out on the Patreon for MCDM, they have a free download of playtest rules, and they're looking for lots of people to try it out. So what I'm trying to do in this video is teach you the playtest version. I was also doing this so I would learn it myself because I'm going to play it this Saturday, and you can watch me playing it on the D20 Play channel. There will also be a link down below to that. So this video is going to try to, in 5 rooms, create a cool setup for a Crows game, showcase how the rules work as you might teach it to other people. So if you want to run Crows, there's an included adventure. You could definitely use that. But if you want to make your own, as I say, a secondary thing, you could use this adventure to run for them. And hopefully watching this, whether you're a player or a DM, teaches you the game well enough that you can jump into another game or play through that included adventure in the packet and feel pretty good about it. Makes sense? All right, let's dive in. So what is Crows? Crows is an RPG that provides a post-apocalyptic survival horror fantasy tabletop role-playing game experience. And when you think of various types of RPGs, like say Draw Steel that you see behind me, that is a fantasy, heroic, tactical, cinematic game, right? You can see how these words, the keywords, are very different. We're not going super tactical with Crows. We're not going super heroic. This is a game of dungeon delving or similar types of experiences where you are often at the end of your wits. You're watching your health, which is called stamina, very carefully. You're worried about everything that might be around any corner. You feel the danger, the dread of what is unexpected, but you're driven by greed to get enough gold to come back. And not only greed, though greed is a big motivation, it can be need. You must get this gold and bring it back, and with it, help your village survive against the horrors of the land. This is a setting where magic went wrong, and so your village is in a precarious situation. You, as Crows, which is the name given to people who are brave or foolhardy enough like you to go into the wastes and try to bring back treasures, you're trying to do that to keep your village going, right? So we've got an adventure called Blood Library that is included in the packet. I'm not going to use that because I'd be cheating. We're going to instead create a 5-room Crows experience that walks you through the rules. And that's the point of this video. So if you're watching this and Crows is already out, I will hopefully have another video that walks you through the room to play of the final Crows. But here, the point of this video is learning to play the playtest version so you can try it out with friends. So let's talk about what 5-room learn to play is. This is a technique based on the idea of a 5-room dungeon, but the point is to teach it. To teach the game that you like to other people, and that when you're doing that, when you're trying to teach people a new game, there is a way to do that that can be sort of easier if you follow this 5-room process. So if your first room focuses on skills, that often is a low pressure way to interact with the game, get a feel for your character, do a little role playing on the side, ask questions, sort of have some fun. Then we can have in room 2 some easy and fun fights. That fight that is going to just feel like you're learning the mechanics, and you'll feel good because you're going to win because it's easy and fun. So you get through that experience and sort of learn combat a bit. And then at the end of it, feel like, yeah, okay, I know how skills work. I know how fighting works. And then we go and have something that digs into the experience a little more. So we come away with it going, so that was a neat story and I like what was going on. So a role play or negotiation, sometimes RPGs have rules for that. Spoiler, Crows does not. And then for the fourth room, we're going to showcase additional gameplay. Maybe the RPG has a special subsystem for downtime or something like that. That's what we do in step 4. Give some taste of what the rest of the game provides, something neat that might surprise. And then we end the experience with a thrilling final battle where it's tough, you feel a little pushed, but hopefully at the end of it, you get to say we either had an amazing TPK, very applicable in Crows, or we were victorious. That was amazing. Feels great. Can't wait to play again. So that is the 5-room learn to play concept. Let's apply that to Crows. And we're going to start with the premise. So the premise that I have here goes into the lore of the game. Yaka, a priestess of the gardener, one of the gods that oversees things like crops and growing and things like that, nature. A priest of the gardener named Yaka found a scrap of lore suggesting there is a cave where druids in service to Amaryl the Generous, this is one of the ancient powerful mages, experiment with magic to grow crops before the world collapsed. Now, that could be bad because these ancient powerful mages became necromancers, but I'm sure it's okay, right? So okay that Yaka sent Temelu, her apprentice, to go check it out. But Temelu hasn't come back. So how about you, Crows, go check it out and bring back anything valuable and any important information? Sound great? Fantastic. So off you go. And we're going to use this cool map, which is of a fungal kind of filled central cavern and various offshoot caverns. It's a neat map that's included in the 2014 D&D DMG. Really excellent map. All the maps in the back of that book are just so excellent. And in the first room, it's going to be the big central cavern. So the heroes are going to walk in, having done a short trek. By the way, Crows has an overland travel, sort of travel exploration, wilderness exploration system. Looks cool, but I thought that would complicate things, so we're not going to use that here. But just so you're aware of it. So in the first room, we're going to walk in. The heroes, however many are playing at this table, will walk in and check out what's going on. They see lots of openings going into other caverns, which roughly are divided into 4 sections. Up ahead, you could also go, but it's a sort of a rift and a little treacherous. So we'll say you don't want to go that way for the purpose of making this 5-room dungeon. But in the central chamber, you see water, you see these fungal growths and these various exits. And there is a trail of purple mushroom bits, similar to the ones growing in the center, that leads to the east. And the fungus, you can smell a sweet smell coming from it. So naturally, this is a setup designed to make the players say, ooh, I want to make a test. I want to use my skills. And so let's talk about how that works. So the basic mechanic is similar to the game Draw Steel, if you happen to know that, in that your main roll for dice to do something is not a d20, it's 2d10. And you're going to always round down if you have to. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll the 2d10. We're going to add those together. We are going to apply to it our characteristic. And then there could be situational bonuses or skills that will add to that. What are the characteristics? Just 3. So if you think of 6 scores in D&D, 6 different ability scores, we only have 3: agility, mind, and strength. They can be anywhere from -5 to +5, but you're going to start way more relaxed than that, with things being either -1, 0, or +1. So not a lot of math going on there. Just the 2d10, add those together. We add or subtract our characteristic, and then we might be skilled. So skills come from your background, and then later as you level up. And there are 3 general categories of skills: general, spellcasting, and weapon. So you are, in fact, when you attack or cast a spell, making a test, which is the name for a sort of skill check. You're making a test, and you're using the skill associated with the weapon or the spell. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to combat. So you can see here the list of general skills that are there. Things like alchemy or climb, endurance, gymnastics, jump, lift, right? Number of skills here. So nature lore, for example, somebody might have nature lore and say, ooh, can I use that? Somebody else might have something like search, which we might say, well, you can do it to sort of see what's around, but it's not going to help you the way nature lore would. So you as DM get to decide whether you apply it. And the game does say that there can be more than one skill that applies. Like if you're trying to figure out what a magic weapon does, blacksmithing might work, but also enchant might work, and also magical lore might work. So, we make calls based on that. Handle animal might even be something that we allow in some cases later associated with, as you'll see as we progress in this adventure. But probably for now, the one that really makes sense is nature lore. But we could decide that something like magic lore applies as well. In fact, I might say that works pretty well in this situation. So if you have a skill from this that applies, you would add the bonus to that. And skill bonuses are generally going to be +1, +2 if you really have put points into it as you level up, assuming you didn't die. Then you will be able to do a +2. So that skill test to figure out what these fungi are, it's going to be 2d10. And we're going to add those together. We're going to add in our characteristic for our mind. And then we said yes to a player asking if they can use the nature lore or magic lore skill. And so if they have that, they get to add what will likely be +1 to that. Now we get the result. And here, again, if you know the game Draw Steal, you've got some advantages, because the way the game works is it has 3 tiers of success. If your total is 11 or lower, you get tier 1 result. That is going to be a failure, and the referee might impose a setback. Sometimes you get some success, like when you're casting a spell, it works, but there's a cost to it. If you get a 12 to 16, you get tier 2. This is pretty good. You get either a partial success, or you might succeed fully at a cost. An example given in the rules are you're sneaking past a monster. You get about halfway, and then you've got to stop because the monster is going to see you if you keep going, or does see you. Or maybe we say as referee, hey, player, I'll let you get all the way, but here's what happens. As you're moving, a piece of your equipment snags, and that's what's going to give you away, except you let it kind of get caught on that thing, get snagged, and you lose the equipment. So choose one piece of equipment and leave it behind, and you can make it all the way hidden. And so that might be worth it for you, right? Sort of a little devil's bargain there. If you get a 17 plus on that 2d10 plus your characteristic plus your skill, you get to do it exactly the way you wanted it without any complication. This is different than Draw Steal in terms of how this works. It's much harder. The reason is Crows is a game where you often fail, and the fun is seeing how you deal with these kinds of surprises and pressures and difficulties. It's a game where you're going to laugh a lot and go, oh no, instead of maybe Draw Steal's heroic kind of play, where you often go, yeah, here's how I do this. Things always work, and so on. Should you get a 19 to 20, here you do get to cheer. You get a crit, and that gives you a tier 3 result plus a little bit more. If you get a 2 to 3 on the dice, that is a doom. That is a crit fail. You get tier 1 plus a major setback. So you failed, and there is a major implication to the fact that it didn't work. And these are things that the referee just sort of makes up. By the way, if I say director, that's named for Draw Steal's DM. So that might slip into, wouldn't be shocked if it's already slipped into, but what I mean in this game is referee. So the referee, gets to create those, and they're examples of sort of how you might adjudicate things in various situations. So there you have it. The hero that takes the lead says, I want to come up and check out this fungus. I want to make this test. And you say, okay, so let's say they get a partial success. We might say that these are growing periodically and sort of offshooting, but somebody's been pruning them. So there's been somebody tending them recently. And also there are signs that creatures have fed on them in the past. So there's been predation going on here that has kept them sort of small and from spreading further into the cavern. And maybe with a full success, you would learn that there is some magical nature to these. But it's hard to know. You can't learn really what it does without trying them. But you know that they're probably safe to eat for humans. They resemble mushrooms that are safe to consume for humans, but they cause real illness in animals. And that would be the really important information you get there. Now, if you try them out, you get a boon. I'm not sure what that would be. I haven't thought about that actually, but you get something cool, right? So maybe you can turn you can get +1 to your tier on a result if the next time that you get something that's tier 1 or tier 2. Something like that. Let's go with that. So something fun that if they eat them, they feel cool. Ooh, we figured out our role. We made this test and it's great. You might also do other things, right? One of the things that Crows tries to reward is play where you are cautious but active. And I thought that was a neat way that the rule says it. We want to be doing things, right? Not paralyzed by fear. We don't want to be inactive, but we want to take risks with some thought. And so you might go, I want to see if there are any tracks around here. And that's where another successful test might reveal that, a humanoid has been moving around here, but not in the last couple of days. And that's sort of interesting. But there is a very large creature that has come into this cavern from the northwest and fed on these things and then retreated back to that area. Also, there's obviously that trail that leads towards the east. That has small humanoid tracks next to it, like wherever that humanoid was that retreated, put that out there a couple of days ago and maybe went back and waited. So that's some interesting information that the characters can act upon. And let's talk a little bit about your characters and how you make a character that ends up having, your possible bonuses to these skill tests. When I normally advocate using a 5-room dungeon, I would say you use pre-gens. But making a character is really easy in Crows. It's sort of if you've played Shadowdark or a game like that, it's so simple that you can just do it really, really quickly. And what you basically do when you're making a character is you roll 2d6 to figure out your background. Like maybe you're a cook. And that's what you used to be. And based on what you were before you became a Crow, you get a bonus of +1 to one characteristic, a +1 to some skills, a stamina score, and a starting trait. So as a cook, you worked as a cook at a tavern or other organization. You can choose which characteristic to get a +1 to. You have 7 stamina. That's like your hit points. You have the traits of camping and hearty meals. And that is sort of like a feat type situation. They're all defined in the book. You get +1 skills to alchemy, endurance, lift, nature lore. Ooh, that's good. And slashing. Your equipment are cook's utensils, hearty rations, 2 of them, a pot, and a torch. And you've got the starting equipment as well. So all characters begin with a bedroll, an empty coin purse, a knife, a rope, and 6 rations. And there is a neat system that when you would, if you sit down to play with the players, you'd have them, you'd give them let them know that they get this equipment. You would give them cards for that equipment. And the way that inventory works in Crows, which is really cool, is you have a certain number of slots that are available. There are other games that use this type of format too, but you actually physically put the cards down. And where you place them matters, because if you say have to draw something, pull something out in the middle of combat, what number slot it's associated with makes it easier or harder. Basically the first numbers are the easiest, because just like say slot 1, you roll a d10. If you get that number or higher, which you always would for slot 1, you can switch out to that thing. But if it's a number like, say, 4, you must roll a 4 or higher to get it. Otherwise, you can rearrange your bag, but you can't actually draw it this turn. So to do that as a single maneuver to draw it out, that's what it takes. So you place these equipment cards down on a sort of inventory tracking sheet that has a bunch of different slots. There is a sort of sample version that we can use in the RPG. So this is just the very simple form they give us right now. You've got 2 hands with which to hold various things, and you can also use an unarmed strike or improvised weapon, which always has these abilities. But you could put a card on top of it for that knife that you're carrying. And we can look up the rules to see like, okay, here's a knife, and here's what it does. You roll 2d10 plus either your agility or your strength. And here's what a tier 2 or a tier 3 does. Because a tier 1's a miss, it only tells you those 2 tiers. And it has some special abilities like letting you disengage, letting you parry, and things like that. We won't go into all of these here, but it's just the concepts that are neat. And so one of the things that's pretty neat, let's say if you wanted to take some of these mushrooms, we might say, okay, you can take 5 samples will fit in a single slot. You say, okay, I'm going to put those in my belt pouch in case I need them, right? Is a possible thing to do. Or as part of our character creation, we would have chosen various slots where to put like our pot, right? Like we got to choose where those things go that came with our character. A few other things, our starting speed will be 5. That's the number of squares we move. This is generally a game where you would use a grid. And so things are in squares. And so starting speed of 5 5-foot squares. When we're making our character, we'd say, okay, our characteristics are all 0, all 3. And we might say, well, our background lets us choose. So maybe we decide our cook is +1 to mind. And then you can go negative in one to be positive in another. So we might say, you know, our cook gets +1 to anything. We'll say +1 mind. Let's take a -1 to agility, and we're going to get a +1 to strength. All right, there we go. We have 7 stamina. We've got our knife in our equipment slot. We get to come up with a name and distinguishing feature. We've got our starting equipment. And then the only other thing that you do is as a group, you make a village. And that could actually be fun to do in the step where you do a sort of different system. So you know what you're fighting for. That could be neat. But I think those rules might not be fully out. I forget. I haven't really looked at them. So I'm not going to cover that here. We'll do a different subsystem. All right, so on to our second room, our easy, fun fight. The purpose of this room with the 5-room learn to play method is to just get down those combat mechanics. We understand generally how tests work, but now we want to apply it to combat, get some of that excitement, learn how initiative works, and all of that. So what happens more likely is you're going to go towards that trail of purple fungus crumbs, breadcrumbs that are leading towards the east. And when you get in there, you see there are 2 wolves that look sick. They're lying on their sides. They look up at you like they want to defend themselves, but they're kind of convulsing. And then they, on unsteady legs, stand up with purple eyes and drool. And we're in initiative. You do see a side entrances chamber. It looks like they came in through there. And the fungus, there's a bunch of it here, like it was set for these creatures to take and maybe leading them into the cavern if they liked it. But they were sickened by this. So let's talk about how combat works. And with that idea of how our example character worked. As I mentioned, combat takes place with miniatures on a 5-foot grid. Diagonals are still the same distance as non-diagonals. For initiative, if there's surprise, you lose your turn, attacks have +1 against you. But here we're going to choose one player and they're going to roll a d10. If they get a 6+, they go first and then the enemies will go. So it's a little different than draw steel in that everybody goes on one side, then the other side goes. I actually enjoy in our draw steel game, which uses a similar determination of rolling that d10 to do opposed rolls. Like I roll, the players roll. But if you want it to feel less adversarial, then just have the players roll on their own. They get a 6+, they go first. And so let's say they win. They will all decide in what order to act. Then the referee will decide for all the monsters that the referee controls. So I've got these 2 wolves that I'll decide in what order they go. And for a turn, you're going to take an action as well as a maneuver, or you can take 2 maneuvers by converting your inaction into a maneuver. Maneuvers are generally smaller things that you do with your time, and your action is your main thing you're doing. A lot of obviously attacks and spells are like that, but major things that can all be actions. If you're operating a catapult or something like that, you know, changing something major like that equipment-wise, you would do that. Like you were operating a gate mechanism would probably be like that. But flipping a lever would probably be a maneuver or maybe no action at all, depending on the situation. One thing that comes back is the ability to ready an action. So you can say, I want to fire my bow when, and as readying that action. So examples of maneuvers are things like moving your speed. So that maneuver is your movement. Shifting a square without provoking attacks of opportunity. Commanding a pet, drawing an item from your pack or 2 items from your belt, picking up something on the ground, standing up, grabbing somebody to try to keep them from getting away, escaping someone's grab, or pushing someone back with what's called knockback. Again, if you've played Draw Steel, some of these are known to you. Attacks are going to be similar they're going to be your main action, your action, and these are going to be similar to other tests. So let's say that the heroes have won. There are these 2 sickened looking wolves. Our cook we all decide we'll go first, and they get to, again, roll 2d10, add their skill. In this case, it's their weapon skill, so the skill with that knife. So we can take a look and see that our cook does in fact have slashing as one of their skills. So that is for slashing type weapons, including their knife. So they do luckily get a +1. So it's 2d10 plus their characteristic of might, which they're +1 in. So 2d10 +1 for the skill. 2d10 +2. They will roll that to hit the closest wolf and see what they get. If they get an 11 or lower, that's your tier 1 result. A tier 1 with a weapon is a miss, no damage, and it might have a consequence. And it depends on the type of weapon. So if you miss with melee, the target can spend their reaction to counter, attacking back at you. And they don't roll, they just get the tier 2 result. It's actually worse if you get like a doom result. If you roll a 2 or a 3 on your attack, not only do you miss, but they get a tier 3 when they counter. If your attack is ranged, you lose your ammunition because you missed. And if the target was adjacent to allies, you hit one of them, dealing tier 2 or tier 3 if you rolled a doom. So you can see there what happens on that tier 1. On tier 2 and tier 3, you hit. If you crit, you get an extra action, and that is done immediately if it, say, was an opportunity action. Otherwise, on your turn, somewhere in your turn, you would get to do that extra action. So I could maybe attack, move over to the other wolf, attack again. If you have an attack that targets multiple targets, you roll once, use the same result for all. You can get +1 for flanking, +1 for high ground, and that's pretty much it. It's relatively simple in terms of what's going on. So you would roll, you would see what tier you get, and depending on your tier, you would look at the weapon. So we can see here the knife. It has on a 12 to 16, which is your tier 2, you get to do 2 plus either your agility or strength, so we would do 3 damage. And if you get a 17 or higher, it's 4 plus your agility or strength, so that'll be 5 damage. Pretty good. If we take a look at a wolf, we can see that they have a stamina score of 15. So hitting them for 5, pretty good. You've got a third of their hit points down, but that still takes 3 hits to take down a wolf. And if you were hitting with just 3 damage, well, you need 5 hits to do that. So the whole party's gonna have to focus on that wolf, maybe get a little lucky, and try to take that wolf down. This is a serious opponent. So let's say a couple people hit that wolf. The referee notes how much stamina has been lost. Maybe somebody would even do a spell. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's say the wolf gets to attack back. It becomes the turn of the referee. So now the wolf is going to attack. They are going to do their bite, which is the listed attack here. They are +2, so 2d10 +2. The range is melee 1, so it's that adjacent cook is probably going to get it. And if I hit tier 2, I'm going to deal 3 damage. If I hit tier 2 or tier 3, I deal 4 damage. And if you recall, our cook has a stamina of 7. So a single hit dealing 3 damage or 4 damage, yeah, you're kind of worried about that. So that could be round 1, right? We do that sort of exchange. Let's talk about what happens in the next round when a spellcaster decides to use one of their spells. So they will do something similar to what weapon users use, but they're going to use their spellcasting ability, and there are various skills. So there are skills for each of the, we might call them schools of magic, or in this case, it's types of magic, the discipline. So it might be illusion, or it could be necromancy, for example. So your skill for a caster will be in those various different types. So you would use, your spells have ranks, which are like levels. The higher the rank, the more power you get. You have things like casting time and targets and range and all of that kind of thing. Your area effects can be auras of cubes or lines, and durations, things like that. So you would do a test again. You would say your mind plus the applicable skill. So we might say like illusion or necromancy, and you would roll those 2d10, add those bonuses, and again, you're looking for that tier 2 or tier 3. So if you're used to games like Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of others where there's a target number that always changes, right? We'd say, what is their armor class? What is the difficulty of this test? Now, in Crows, just like in Draw Steel, it's always those tier 2s, tier 3s that you're shooting for. And those numbers are always the same. So it's not changing based on like a different lock. It's more what it means to succeed and fail that can sometimes change in certain situations. But you're just looking for those dice to give you that result. It's not increasing as you go up in level or whatever. So you are, again, just making that spellcast test, and you are hoping that you get the tier 2 result or tier 3 result, especially that tier 3, so you can deal the full effect of your spell. When you use your spell, you're going to look up, just like you did for that weapon, what the tier 2 and tier 3 effect is. You're going to apply that to the target, and hopefully you're cooking some evil wolf up so that it can't be super evil and terrible and eat your friends. But there are two wolves here, so probably not happening this round. If you have a crit when you're casting, one benefit is you don't use up uses in your spellbook. And the way that's done is spellbooks, like a lot of items, have something called usage dice. It's a pretty neat system. Actually feels like some Free League games, which I really like. The idea is that you have these D6s, and each time you cast a spell, your usage dice you roll, and if you get a 1 or a 2, you remove that die. And so your spell book, when it reaches 0, you can't use it until you rest, and then it'll get its usage dice back. That means that, a little bit like Shadow Dark, you're not entirely sure when you'll run out of spells, but it's unlikely to be immediately bad. You're going to get a few uses out of it, right? If your usage dice are 2, you're rolling those 2. The chances that you roll both 1 or 2 are pretty low, but even better if it's 3s or 4s or something like that. And again, if you crit, you don't use up these usage dice. And so you will make that casting check and see the effects based on what you rolled. The other thing that's happening is every time you are casting a spell, the referee is rolling a d6 plus the rank of your spell in secret. And that number is kept track of. When it reaches 13 or higher, your spell is a backlash. So magic is dangerous. And it's not because you failed, it's just simply dangerous on its own, because it's literally why the world is apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic. So chaos count, if the chaos count gets 13 or higher, backlash happens and we reset the counter. So it happens every 13, and 13 or higher does it. So there is a table with all kinds of things. James has a video on this that's really a fun watch. I think the lowest one is like you get a donkey head, and then the highest one is like, a really horrible type of death. So lots of things can happen in between that make things very interesting, and it depends on like what the target is. It's that wand of wonder sort of fun that makes things sort of chaotic. Let's talk about your stamina. So this is your health, and what you're going to have happen in this combat is you're going to get attacks and damage is going to be applied. Now you might be wearing armor. If you have armor, first we look at the armor defense. And let's say you have a shield and like leather armor. They both have AD values, and we can decide which one's getting hit first. Like maybe my shield. When that damage comes in, I subtract the damage from that AD, that armor defense. And when that AD reaches 0, that shield has a big rent in it and doesn't work. I could fix it later, so I probably put it on my back and, in a slot, but I'm not using it anymore, and now it's my armor. When I have an AD of 0, I'm not blocking anything anymore. And also there could be piercing damage, which ignores AD and just goes straight to stamina. But let's say our AD is 0, or I don't have any armor, the case with my poor cook. Damage is going to be subtracted directly from my stamina, which is 7 for my poor little cook. At 0, if it was a creature like one of those wolves, they just die. Sometimes you can knock them unconscious and things like that, but generally they die or an object is destroyed. But as a PC, you reduce your stamina to 0, and then you take 1 wound for each damage. Wounds fill up a backpack slot of the PC's choice. So let's say you've got, a whole full backpack, and you take a damage to a slot, and you might say, well, I don't super need the thing in slot 10, and it's hard to get that. I'm going to take a wound there. And because you have an item in it, your speed is now reduced by 1. Later, you could dump that and your speed would not be reduced, and just deal with the fact that you have a wound and dump that, say, treasure that you don't need. You decide you don't want to carry because you don't want to reduce your speed. But if you're trying to, say, get out of this dungeon and you're trying to get back to the village, and so you really want to be carrying that full backpack full of all the great loot you just risked your life to get, well, you're now speed could be reduced by a lot of wounds if you're filling that backpack. It's a really interesting idea, right? A lot of risk reward there ratio that you're trying to figure out as a player, because you're going to take wounds, that locks up your slots, reducing your speed and so on. If your backpack should be fully filled by wounds, you are dead, and it's time to make a new character. The good news is, as your characters advance, the new characters get more backgrounds, so that sort of helps keep them similar to other characters. I should mention there's a whole way that you rest and get some things back, but for this learning 5-room dungeon, we wouldn't really worry about that. We'd just go on to the next room, which is going to be roleplay. And this is interesting because in this game, there really aren't social skills and there aren't social mechanics. There are no montages or negotiations as there are in Draw Steel. It literally is just like, look, social situation, talk, figure it out. But in this case, we can have something that's central to the plot that works pretty well in this third room. And that is you can follow the tracks back to finding the southwest cavern. This has, you see a barricade set up, and there is somebody back there kind of hiding, concealing. You see a bunch of crates that have some food in it. And it is, in fact, the apprentice. And so calling out will get them to talk to you, and Temelu will say that like, who are you? Why are you here? And you shouldn't be here. This is my cave now. And if you look, you'll see that he has purple irises. So he has clearly been eating this stuff and maybe getting the benefit of it, but perhaps too much. As you talk to him, you realize that it does seem like he doesn't have control fully of his faculties. He's very erratic, shakes a bit. But you can talk him down. You can explain that you came here to help, and he will reveal the fact that, and he does not want to fight because he knows fighting is dangerous, and that's not what he does. But he began to realize that he could control animals, this bear that came by that ate the fungus. And that was great, but then the bear kept changing and kind of getting these pustules around it, and now it won't listen to him. It's like it went from following him to not. He decided that he should eliminate that bear because he very much likes the powers that he feels he's getting from these funguses. So he tried to draw some other animals, the wolves, to get them to attack it. And now the characters have arrived before he could deploy that plan and probably fail horribly with it. He does have some food and things like that he can share once you talk him down and convince him to maybe go on a cleansing diet. In fact, nature check could show that there's some other things growing in this cavern that you can actually, in one of the caverns, that you can use to counter the effects and sort of cleanse out those toxins. But he will share where the bear is, which is to the northwest. And then he'll also tell you that in the northeast chamber, there is some unstable ground there, basically quicksand that'll sink down. But on the far end, there are some supplies and treasures he was able to get a few of before the ground started to sink. So he tells you that in exchange for the fact that you will help remove the bear. And that lets us go to room 4, additional gameplay. In the 5-room learn to play, what we want to do with this room is teach some other options to the game. And what we can do here is a little bit of exploration around, negotiating. So it's some more skill reinforcement around maybe finding where this loose sand is that is actually quicksand, leaping past it, or finding a way, like getting some of the wood that he had used as his barricade. We could use that to just get back there without any check at all. And this actually does sort of qualify as additional gameplay because it's a very important part of Crows, that if you can find a way to overcome some situation and avoid rolling, that is great. You don't want to not do something, but doing something that's smart, that gets us past. And so this can be a teachable lesson where you set up, hey, I used that wood that we had that he used as his barrier. We set it up here so we can get across the quicksand without any problem. And then you find these crates. And in these crates, there are items that are useful for crafting. And that's where we could explain, hey, here's how your village works. Here is how you would, over time, build up the village, which is a really cool part of it. You get to not only detail your village, which you could maybe even do right now, like let's roll up your village and find what you're actually fighting for. But then we could also talk about you could over time build up your village in this way, maybe making it so that when you bring in valuables, they're easier to sell. You get more for them because there's a market that's thriving in the village. or potions can be crafted because we, built this sort of alchemical place. All kinds of things like that. It's really fun. There are these little subsystems that you can use, and so we could talk through that here in this room. All right, here we go. It's time for our thrilling fight. We've got this corrupted bear. The area back here on the map, you can see has a number of different ways you could get to it. So there's some excitement there as to which way to go. Where is the bear? And then it comes out at you, and we fight it. And to make things interesting, you can see here that we've got a number of animals. There aren't a ton of monsters right now for this game, but just enough for the playtest. And there is a bear there. That bear, it is a large creature, has 30 stamina. It has a speed of 6, a strength of 2. It gets +2 to its bite and its claws. It can deal 4 damage or 6 damage even with that bite. Ooh, brutal, right? So very, very dangerous creature. And it can fight in dim light, so we could play with the lighting and show some lighting rules because it doesn't take the -1 from the dim light that the other creatures would take. That would be pretty cool. And we could make it even more interesting and deadly because we want to teach the players the whole point of what happens when you die, or at least when you take a lot of wounds. We could have it that when it gets to a certain level of hit points, maybe it's 30, it releases a bunch of these guys. Blood Creature A. This is just sort of a general stand-in for sort of a horrible thing right now. But you can see these are small. They are pretty weak, but we could have a bunch of them drop out of this thing, and they can deal 2 damage or 3 damage when they attack with their claws. But a bunch of these sort of like blood creatures erupt from the body and start attacking in addition to the bear, which lets you know this is really, really bad. Certainly convinces our NPC friend that this is very bad and you should go on a cleansing diet because you do not want to be part of this purple mushroom terribleness. So maybe our heroes are able to defeat these blood creatures and the bear Papa. And that thrilling battle will hopefully feel good. Most or some of the heroes are standing, or maybe not at all, but we get through that thrilling battle. And if we do survive, we might find some additional things in the cave. Maybe there's some research notes that tell you how to craft some particular potions out of the other plants that are these cleansing plants. And we can bring that back. Sell those to the priestess that hired us, and contribute to the well-being of the village. Also, there was some loot in those crates, so we bring that loot back and sell it. We rescued the apprentice. Maybe he'll owe us one, and once they get better, do lead us to the next adventure. But that's kind of it now. We've got our thrilling battle. We ended on a high note. Give a little bit of conclusion as to how we've bettered off the village, because that's an important part. And then just settle back and just chill, ask for questions and how everybody felt about the game. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the video on Crows, the RPG that is in playtest form. Again, not its final form. And that also means that I haven't played it. I've only read it. I'm going to play it this Saturday on the D20 Play channel. Check that out. And you can see what I got wrong about the rules. We're all learning. It's early, but hopefully this video has helped you get a sense of what Crows offers, why it might be fun. There are some additional components. There are some things like dungeon turns and rolling for random encounters. I didn't go over that in this five room scenario. There are things like the outdoor travel and so on. So there are other bits that will make the game more interesting. Don't think that you've seen everything, but hopefully this does it. So if you go check out that free packet and you download and look at it, you already are prepped and understand how to use it. Shout out to James Introcaso, one of my favorite designers. MCDM, fantastic company to work with. You can follow the work that I've been doing for Crack the Sun. If you like the work I do, one of the things you might do is check out the Mastering Dungeons podcast, where we've been giving Patreon members some items and other cool creations, including I made 2 draw steel weapons. Let me know if you want to see more. And on my own Patreon, we've got a lot of awesome things going on. You support the work like this video. You can see links on how to join both Patreons down below. Thank you for your support. Keeps me going and lets me do more in the hobby. I'll see you next time.